Welcome to this virtual Cabinet meeting. I'm Councillor Paul Skinner. I'm the leader of the Council and Chairman of Cabinet. Before this meeting starts, could I ask that a roll call be taken of both members and officers attending? Jeanette, please.
Thank you, Chairman. If members could indicate their presence. Councillor Tracy Abbott.
Present.
Councillor Richard Austin. Councillor Austin.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Griggs.
Present.
Councillor Jonathan Noble.
Present.
Councillor Yvonne Stevens.
Present.
Councillor Nigel Welton.
Present.
And officers in attendance are the Deputy Chief Executive for Place and Monitoring Officer Michelle Sachs.
Thank you, Jeanette. Present.
Thank you. The Deputy Chief Executive for Strategy, Tim Leader.
Good evening.
Thank you. Section 151 Officer Adrian Sibley.
Present.
The Assistant Director for Towns Fund, Lydia Rustling, is attending but isn't here as yet.
Sorry, Jeanette, if I may intervene. Lydia's not attending our meeting tonight. If there's any questions in respect to that item, I will take those.
Thank you. The Assistant Director for Housing and Wellbeing, Michelle Howard.
Present.
The IT and Transformation Manager, Suzanne Rolfe.
Present.
Community Safety Manager, Peter Hunn.
Good evening, present.
Thank you. And myself from Democratic Services, Jeanette Collier, Clerk for the meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Jeanette. We move on to part one, the preliminaries. Have I the Cabinet's permission to sign the minutes of the meeting of the Cabinet held on the 24th of February 2021?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Have you got any comments at all on those minutes? Right, thank you. That is read. Part B, are there any apologies, Jeanette?
Yes, Chairman, there are apologies from Rob Barlow, the Chief Executive, as he's having to attend the executive meeting at East Lindsey District Council.
Thank you very much for that. And then I will inquire to whether any members wish to declare interest in respect of any items on the agenda, please. No, thank you. So part D, are there any questions from members of the public?
Yes, Chairman, there's one question from Mr. Darren Abbott to yourself, Chairman.
So I'll read that out then. Okay. For the leader, at the last full council meeting, Councillor Dorian asked the question of yourself regard to whether it was appropriate for councillors to attend premises during COVID lockdown period. I've privately provided you evidence of 2 councillors that visited constituents in early March. As the council's constant messages, stay at home, stay safe, will you publicly condemn the actions of the councillors? And my answer to Mr. Abbott is the matter was investigated by the monitoring officer and the regulatory body and no action was taken. Mr. Abbott has then submitted a supplementary question. I thank the leader for his answer, but I did ask him personally if he condemned the councillors' actions. Earlier this week, one of the councillors took to social media, as you're aware, to tell their constituencies of the changes to the COVID regulations, which proves they are aware of the rules. So is the word of the council, do they not do as they say, or do the councillors have COVID immunity? Excuse me. And my answer to that would be, I would be supportive of the authorities in enforcing the law. So that is that. Moving on to part 2. Item 1, are there any recommendations from the overview and scrutiny committees to this meeting? Jeanette.
Chairman, recommendations from scrutiny are contained within the reports on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 2, are there recommendations from BTAC?
There are none for this meeting, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Now there is a change to the order of items tonight, as our Assistant Director for Housing and Wellbeing has to leave in order to join the ELDC's executive meeting. So we'll take the items 6 and 7 first. So the first item is Lincolnshire Homes for Independence Blueprint. So Councillor Griggs will present.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Bear me 1 second. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to go through the report in its entirety. We've had a briefing on it, we've debated it. Everyone's seen it. So I'm just generally going to give an overview of the summary. We all know that housing is a key determinant for health and well-being amongst our local population. And there's evidence cited throughout the report and where the evidence is, an impact it can have on physical health, well-being generally, and how it helps people to continue having positive experiences throughout life. The Lincolnshire Homes for Independence Blueprint is the result of a massive collaboration amongst lots of parties, multi-agency, and it generally demonstrates the commitment to Lincolnshire residents so that they can access and sustain safe, affordable and suitable housing. So it's not always a case of just having houses there, it's making sure there's suitable tenures to meet the needs, and not just the current needs, but the future needs of our residents. And it focuses on the ethos of homes, not houses. You know, a house you can quite happily up and leave at the moment, it's no longer fit for purpose. A home, you can build a life there, and you can maintain living there long past when a home fits its suitability. When a house fits its suitability, rather. So essentially what the blueprint does is it focuses on key thematic areas that require a systemic response. So those thematic areas are growing the supply of appropriate housing to meet a range of specific housing needs, aiming to influence design, location and number of homes delivered, secure better outcomes from existing resources, and enable residents in Lincolnshire to plan ahead to meet their housing need. As I said, it's been developed with work through a group that myself and the leader sits on, the Health, Housing, Care Delivery Group, which work underneath the Lincolnshire Health and Wellbeing Board. And it's been endorsed by the Lincolnshire Health and Wellbeing Board in December 2020. It's been endorsed by Lincs County Council, and it's currently going through all of the district councils underneath to hopefully accept the blueprint. What I will say is it doesn't place any restrictions on what we can and can't do. It just shows that our commitment, and it shows organisations that work with housing authorities or councils or other organisations in Lincolnshire, that everyone in Lincolnshire is planning on improving the housing standard, improving quality and providing a better quality of tenure to residents. So it's more to send out a big message that, you know, things might be good enough. No, actually, you know, we're aiming for A-star level accommodation. Everyone involved, not just within our council, but everyone who's had a say into it. It's been really informative for myself and for other members and officers. So I'm going to propose the recommendation that we endorse the Lincolnshire Homes for Independence Blueprint and agree to support its ambitions and shape the associated work programme for the benefits of the communities. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Martin. I really welcome this piece of work. I'm quite happy to second it. Jonathan's got his hand up. You like to bring a question?
Yes, thank you. The question either to Martin or to Michelle Howard. I noticed on page 71 that the Lincolnshire Housing, Health and Care Delivery Group, can you give us what reassurance of liaison between that group and social housing providers like Platform Housing? Because I'm looking at one of the specific aims, which is design, location of number and homes delivered. So can we take it as a given that there is liaison between the aforementioned group and the social housing providers when it comes to design of new properties, especially affordable housing properties?
Yeah, so I can completely, thank you very much for your question, Councillor Noble. I can completely say there is liaison. So the Health, Housing, Care Delivery Group is made up of members across all the district councils of the borough, representatives from the county council, housing officers, NHS. Literally, the amount of organisations involved in that board is extremely extensive. And obviously, within that, officers are frequently liaising with housing associations, as are other authorities anyway. So yeah, the idea behind the Health, Housing, Care Delivery Group was essentially get everyone who has any impact in decision making when it relates to housing, health or well-being, and put them in the same room together so that the common themes and common issues could be tackled with a holistic approach, as opposed to siloed thinking, we do one thing, somebody else does something different. And that makes it really difficult for residents to get the best results with the resources available. So yeah, it is most definitely done with liaising with every conceivable partner you could think of.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Martin. Michelle.
Thank you. If I may just add to Councillor Griggs' comments there, if possible, there is also a Lincolnshire Housing Association partnership, which is represented by all of those housing providers across the county. They are formally considering the blueprints at their next meeting, and the chair of that partnership sits on the Housing, Health and Care Delivery Group. So there is that continued link and support as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? It's been proposed and it's been seconded, so we'll move to the vote. Jeanette, could you ask the members, please?
Thank you, Chairman. If members would state whether they are for, against or wish to abstain. Councillor Abbott.
Completely for.
Councillor Austin.
For.
Councillor Griggs.
For.
Councillor Noble.
For.
Yourself, Chairman.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Welton.
For.
That's carried unanimously, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for presenting that, Martin. We move on now to item 7, which is the safeguarding policies and procedures, which starts on page 107 of the agenda pack. And once again, Councillor Martin Griggs, would you present, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so again, I'm not going to go through it in depth. I'm sure most members of Cabinet and any members of the public who pay attention and are listening and keep up to date with what we're doing will remember we brought a new safeguarding policy before the council, I believe about 18 months ago, somewhere in there. Safeguarding is essentially before anything else. And so obviously the Strategic Alliance led to some discrepancies between our policy and ELDC's policy, and that left officers who work across both authorities in, I'm not sure how to phrase it, in an awkward position, because whilst everything they did complied to the law and there was no people who were disadvantaged due to the different policies operating, just in terms of ease of working and making sure that we're effectively allocating resources and to cut down on wastage, it was thought to be a good idea to streamline the safeguarding policies and procedures across both authorities. So the report below presents the updated safeguarding policies and procedures for the Strategic Alliance, and the key changes are summarised to reflect that this is the Strategic Alliance policy for both councils. It summarises the roles, responsibilities and reporting arrangements. The web links are refreshed and updated. There's updated guidance on domestic abuse, modern day slavery and hoarding. training plans have been updated and the Safeguarding Board 6-year training pathway is reflected. So I would like to propose the recommendations as they are on the paper, that members agree to adopt the safeguarding policy and procedures for the Strategic Alliance. And number 2, that members are asked to note that safeguarding is now being delivered as a shared corporate function across the Strategic Alliance.
Thank you.
Happy to take any questions, and I look for a seconder.
Nigel?
Yeah, I'll happily second that and just add that probably this is probably one of the most important things that we do as a local authority, and I'm wholeheartedly in favour of seconding this paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? No? There are no questions. It's been proposed, it's been seconded. I very much welcome the amount of the work that's gone into this. It really makes sense. So, Jeanette, could we move to the vote, please?
Thank you. Again, if members could indicate whether they are for, against or wish to abstain. Councillor Abbott?
For.
Councillor Austin?
For.
Councillor Griggs?
For.
Councillor Noble?
For.
Yourself, Chairman?
For.
Councillor Stevens?
For.
Councillor Welton?
For.
That's carried unanimously, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. We'll move on then to the visitor economy resilience, and it starts on page 9 of the agenda pack. And Councillor Richard Austin, would you like to present this, please, for us? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure that you've all read this with interest. As you know, our retail, tourist and hospitality businesses have been badly affected by COVID. Now, there is also an opportunity for growth because of the town deal projects. So this report outlines the delivery of a plan to support the visitor economy, including businesses in retail, leisure and the hospitality sectors. The plan is to deliver an improved visitor experience, to give critical support for tourism and hospitality businesses, and also connecting them to national initiatives to reopen safely and bring more consumers to the district's towns. It is to be a concerted approach by the economic growth team and will reflect the government's roadmap. Now, one element that I think will interest the Cabinet members particularly is that we are planning to have a service level agreement with the Visit Lincoln team. And I will be I'm very much involved in this in the near future. So there's a lot of depth to this report and the practicalities, but I'll try and field any questions that you may have.
Do you wish to add anything, Councillor Welton, at all?
Yeah, I won't add much. It's a very, very comprehensive document that's going to take us forward to the future. But there's one thing in the recommendations I'd like to emphasise, and that's recommendation 3, that says develop the East Lindsey destination strategy to incorporate Boston and reflect a joint cultural strategy across the Alliance. And I'm sure that there is a total opposite statement with East Lindsey. And this is what the Alliance has brought to us, is it's removed the physical barrier north of Boston from the historics that we've had. So when I've worked on this kind of thing a number of years ago, there was a little bit of a reluctance to work across boundaries because we wanted to do what was for us and they want to do what's for them. And I'm not talking just to East Lindsey, but other authorities as well. But this gives us an ideal opportunity to working over the same staff group, over the same objectives and bringing us all closer together. And that boundary is not there now. So this is about us working better together and being more productive together. So I'm going to second this report. and just say that the amount of work gone into this is massive. It isn't just about a report. This is a working document. It's a working scheme and something that will bring forth some really good bonuses to our economy as we go forward.
Thank you very much for that, Nigel. I've got a couple of hands up for questions. Jonathan?
Thank you. Yes, it's about the Destination Management Organisation, or put it more briefly, tourist board. So there's a plan to set up a tourist board, and I think the funding is going to come initially from additional restrictions grant monies, £300,000 from BBC Us and £300,000 from ELDC. But moving forward beyond the setting up of that DMO, which seems inevitable it will happen, I wonder if Richard could possibly give us an indication of as to what the cost to our council will be in terms of running that tourist board in the future, in future years, once it's been set up.
Well, this is why I'm very interested to go and meet the Visit Lincoln team to discuss these sort of details which aren't available at the moment, and you know, the service level agreement that we're going to arrive at hopefully will give plenty of opportunity for Boston's to be featured in the publicity and promotion. And you know, we've got a lot in Boston to be discovered, and I'm quite happy. I'm quite keen on the idea of discovering Boston. I think that's a theme that we might try and develop as distinct from just visit Boston. I think discover Boston is a much more exciting term.
Quite just very quickly, sorry, if I may, just, you know, in terms of location, we're going to have a tourist board. I mean, is a plan that will be, for example, offices somewhere in East Lindsey, possibly Horncastle when the hub's developed there, or Boston? Has any further thought gone into that yet, or is that thinking too far ahead?
It's certainly not come my way yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Jonathan. Martin, Councillor Martin Griggs, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. It's not a question, it's more of a comment. I think, you know, it's a fantastic idea, and I do share Jonathan's concerns about ongoing funding. But I think, you know, anything we can do to help support the visitor economy in Boston and getting more people in to support businesses in Boston is fantastic. We all know that we've got loads of issues in town that we're trying to address, and we'll hopefully be at least on the way to address them shortly. But extra people coming in and extra money for local economy is always a fantastic thing. So I wholeheartedly support.
Thank you very much, Martin. Councillor Yvonne Stevens.
Thank you, Chairman. Mine isn't a question. Mine is just a bit of a statement, I suppose. I'm finding this quite exciting, actually. Not only have we got Destination Lincolnshire and Discovering Boston, I think this is absolutely brilliant, because here we are in the middle of the Fens and on the edge of the Wash, and we've got the best of both worlds. We've got the fresh vegetables that probably local hospitality venues will use, and we've got the fresh fish and shellfish that can also be brought into Boston. And I think this is an area that we need to grow, simply because if we look at Padstow, where Rick Stein started, okay, he's famous, he started his restaurant. People travel to Padstow simply to eat at his restaurant. So visitor economy. Look at Magpies in Whitby. People travel to Magpies to just sample their food because they've got a good name. And if we apply ourselves in this way and support upcoming businesses that may, or even established businesses that may want to take this route, I think this is absolutely superb, because I do think this is the way forward, using what we've got to our best advantage. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Did you want, you indicated, Richard, and
Yeah, I've just noticed that Lydia's now with us, and I wonder whether she would like to make any comment to add what we've been saying.
Welcome, Lydia.
Thank you, Councillor Austin and Councillor Skinner. My apologies, I had to be at the East Lindsey version of this previously. And what I said to the group there was that these visitor economy resilience plans are part of the recovery plans for the Strategic Alliance. They're very much in line with national policy. So, for example, we're aware that the Department for Culture, Media and Sport are preparing a visitor economy recovery plan, and there are plans afoot in terms of future funding opportunities through culture and tourism. And what we want to do is ensure that we are supporting our businesses within Boston. And that's not just the traditional tourism businesses, that is retail, leisure, hospitality, art and culture, all those elements that go to make up the visitor economy, that we are supportive of a destination management organisation structure in line with the national direction, and that we're prepared for future funding opportunities as well. So it's very much in terms of looking at future opportunities, but also ensuring that resilience that's needed now for an industry that's been so critically impacted by the COVID restrictions. And I did join just as you were talking about potential offices, and I have been discussing that with, there's a group been established, which is primarily businesses across the sectors looking at the establishment of the DMO, and we've been very mindful that we are reflective of a large county, and where appropriate that we would consider office space in other locations as well. So that is being considered.
Thank you very much for that, Lydia. We're not really tied down by restrictions of place quite so much these days with all this virtual stuff. Nigel. Councillor Nigel Welton, would you like to add anything?
I had a few things to say, but as usual, Lydia was off the mark before me, as she always is, because she's so sharp. But yeah, there was one thing I did sort of bring on about the boundary, that, you know, visit Boston and Skegness, whereas before it was visit Skegness or visit Boston. Now we want people to stay and visit other parts of the county as well. And, you know, joining that together makes it so much more welcoming. And we have got resources now and access to other staff members we never had before. And as we said in the Alliance, that this would bring new skills and new skill sets into our council. And we had skill sets in ours that the other councils didn't have. And we are now using that to the full. And this is the kind of thing that's coming out of it. This joint council working with Visit Lincolnshire. Lydia's arranged a meeting for myself and Councillor Austin to meet the Chief Exec of Visit Lincolnshire in, I think, beginning of next month. This is just the beginning of some really big things that are going to happen, but we've got to start from somewhere, and this is where we're starting. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nigel. Yes, Jonathan.
Yeah, just it'd be helpful if Richard just goes through the recommendations for everybody's benefit on page 11.
Got to that bit. Okay. Yeah. I was just about to come back to Councillor Richard Austin and say, would you move the recommendations?
Yes, indeed. But before we do that, can perhaps Lydia wasn't here when Councillor Noble was asking about the costs relating to the establishment of the DMO and the service level agreement with Visit Lincoln. What's the timetable for knowing that sort of thing, or is the cost covered by the 300,000 that we have available to help this development?
Lydia, would you like to come back in?
Yes, of course. So we've identified a ring-fenced amount which has been provided by government for business support measures of 300,000, which is identified in the paper. And then we've suggested that a service level agreement to support businesses in line with that funding is established with Destination Lincolnshire around a set of outputs and outcomes that we can shape, and that part of that is through the discussion that we've instigated with Councillor Austin and Councillor Welton with the Chief Exec. But there is the scope within the 300,000 to look at additional business support measures. So it won't purely be going on an establishment of a destination management organisation. It will be paying for business support measures to support businesses within Boston, within retail, leisure and hospitality. We just want to use that mechanism, one, because of that's the funding requirements. So we can't use that internally. We can't use it to support staff. It has to be commissioned externally. And secondly, it will be in line with those funding requirements and will be based on that service level agreement in year one. However, we are very mindful. I referred previously to that Destination Lincolnshire Pathway Group, which is predominantly the private sector businesses. We're very mindful of the future sustainability of that destination management organisation, and we're working collectively now to ensure that there is a robust business plan behind that for the future. And again, to reiterate that we're in line with that kind of national government policy as well.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Jonathan, did you want to come back?
Just very quickly, just to ask Lydia. Lydia, given that we're putting 300,000 of the additional restriction support money, grant monies, and ELDC are doing the same, that's 600,000. Do you have any notion as to how much of that will be used in actually setting up the DMO itself? What proportion of that money would you think will be put in the direction of setting up the DMO?
Lydia?
So the funding will go on a range of outputs that will be delivered for our businesses.
So, but surely some of it money must be for setting up the DMO itself, surely. Well,
the DMO is being established by Visit Lincoln as a separate organisation, which is they have a separate board, and they have agreed as that board to expand their remit to cover the county. What I want to ensure on behalf of Boston and East Lindsey is that we play a prominent role within that to ensure that our businesses are supported, and that's where the service level agreement comes in, to ensure that any funding that's put within that organisation as a DMO is supportive of the businesses and the outputs required. And I would anticipate that I would, bring that service level agreement back and work with Councillor Austin and Councillor Welton to ensure it meets those requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. I wholeheartedly agree that you need to set the level of output so you know actually what you're delivering. So no other hands. Councillor Richard Austin, are you happy to move the recommendations?
Great pleasure to move the proposition.
Thank you very much.
Formally second them, Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. That's brilliant. So now we move to the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. If members would indicate if they are for the proposals, against, or wish to abstain. Councillor Abbott?
For.
Councillor Austin?
For.
Councillor Griggs?
For.
Councillor Noble?
For.
Yourself, Chairman?
For.
Councillor Stevens?
For.
Councillor Welton?
For.
That's carried unanimously, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. So we now move on to what was item 4, which is the report on review of public places protection order, restricting public right of way over a highway on Hatter Lane, starting at page 27 of the agenda pack. Basically, we are required by law to bring this to Cabinet to make it go for yet another 3 years. The gated area remains the same as the original order that was introduced on the 27th of April 2015. This is a very successful gating order, and I'm quite happy to move the recommendations as written. that we approve the extension of the order and the gating order remains the same. Are there any questions on this report? Councillor Nigel Welton.
Yeah, no questions, Councillor Skinner. I'll just formally second the report.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Councillor Martin Griggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Welton beat me to it. I was going to second it, but yeah, it'd be a shame to not even, or to even contemplate removing it. It's been so useful to the residents of that area to avoid the extreme levels of antisocial behaviour and defecation and urination and all the other sorts of problems that were down that area. So I think it's a fantastic thing to carry on with.
I wholeheartedly agree. It's really been a positive move. So no questions. It's been moved. It's been seconded. Jeanette, could we move to the vote, please?
Thank you, Chairman. If members could indicate if they are for, against or wish to abstain. Councillor Abbott.
For.
Councillor Austin.
For.
Councillor Griggs.
For.
Councillor Noble.
For.
Yourself, Chairman.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Welton.
For.
That's carried unanimously, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. So now we'll move on to item 5, as it was on the original agenda, the Q3 report, performance, risk and finance. And I'll just bring Councillor Noble to do the finance.
Thank you, Chair. Right, members will find the key data of this on pages 55 to 70. I'll endeavour to be fairly succinct and brief. The first thing to say is the council is in a stable financial position. We have a balanced budget for 2021 to 22. We'd like to face greater challenges in the following year, 2022 to 23. So that's why continued financial prudence is needed. Now, obviously, we've suffered a substantial fall in our trading income in the last year as a result of the lockdowns, and we're talking particularly about loss of income from parking, planning and leisure, as you'll see on page 61. Fortunately, we've had continued central government financial support in the form of grants. And of course, the most recent of those is the Green Homes grant for £468,700. I can also tell you that we received another tranche from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government for lost fees and charges of £210,392. Now we were talking, or I was talking earlier about additional restrictions grant monies, and it's just so we know that 300,000 of that is going to come from Boston to enable the promoting of the visitor economy. Reserves are in a fairly robust state. We've had some movement in our reserves, as you will see on page 62. We've had a transfer of 660,000, but they're still in a pretty healthy position with over 12 million in the reserves, but to be precise, 12,589,000. Now, it's been a challenging year, obviously. We've had to use some of our reserve monies, but that's what they're for, isn't it? So when we faced with unprecedented times as we have been. The property funds have held up pretty well, considering, again, if one thinks about the difficulties faced by the office, leisure and retail sectors in the last year. Our performance is only, our returns are only about 80,000 down on the projected income. So we're looking from the property funds projected income of 897,000. We take away the management fees of 213,000, which gives us 684,000. We take away the annual interest payments of 494,000, and that leaves us with a net profit or income of 190,000. So on whole, that's pretty pleasing considering the kind of year we've had. There has been some movement in the capital programme, as you'll see. We've got deferred spending there. This was back on the 2nd of December. Originally, we were scheduled to use 5,610,000. December, we'd use 2,602,000. So that 3 million, I beg your pardon, that's being moved forward to the next year. That's for things like disabled facilities grants, town centre, heritage scheme works, and some Boston Town Deal monies that we've been allowed an extension on the spending of those. So In summary, our financial position remains healthy. We just need to be very prudent going forward into the future, because we cannot be certain just how generous central government monies will be coming to this council in future. So that takes us on to the recommendations now. They're on page 33. I think we take these as a block, but I'll just go through them. So the first one is to approve the reserve movements detailed in table 6, that's on page 62. To approve the updated capital programme I just referred to, that's in table 8 at page 64. To write off the irrecoverable housing benefit overpayments, a sum of £11,689, that's on table 10, page 66. That the supplementary estimates in respect to the Green Homes grant, I've just referred to that earlier, and Homes England funding should be approved. That's set out in table 12 on page 67. And lastly, that the supplementary estimates in respect of COVID-19 monies be approved, as set out in table 13 on page 68. So that summarise it. I'm happy to take questions. If I can't answer them, I'm sure Mr. Sibley, the S151 officer, can.
Do we have any questions? No. So they're the financial recommendations that you've summarised very well. We also got to agree to the quarterly monitoring information, Q3, which everybody's had and nobody's brought anything up. So I'm quite happy to move that. Will you second it, Jonathan?
Yes, I'm happy to second that. Yes, and you referred obviously to risks. Well, our two big risks continue to be housing and budget, as they have been in the recent past. Thank you.
Yes, that's fine, Jonathan. So it's been proposed, it's been seconded. Can we move to the vote then, please, Jeanette? Thank you.
Chairman, if members could indicate, please, for, against or abstention. Councillor Abbott.
For.
Councillor Austin.
For.
Councillor Griggs.
For.
Councillor Noble.
For.
Yourself, Chairman.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Welton.
For.
That's carried unanimously, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. So we'll move on to the final item on the paper, which is the Strategic Alliance COVID-19 Recovery Plan, starting on page 203 of the Gender Pack, which, Councillor Noble?
No, it's not me. It's Tim Leader, I think.
It says
COVID recovery plan. Yes, we're on that one. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, we're on the recovery plan. And do you know, it says that we're presenting it, Jonathan, but do you know...
That's, can I just say that probably, as I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to us needing a recovery plan, I'm probably not the best person forward to talk about it. Oh, I'm happy to.
Well, I'll see if Tim's written the paper. I wonder if he'll indulge us. Tim, please.
Chairman, sorry, while I just unmute myself, and you've taken me by surprise. I thought I was going to be the sort of follow-up stand-in. So if I'm going to take point, I better get on with it. Now I've taken my mute off. I better put my camera on as well, haven't I? Though I'm not sure that you're welcome. Am I visible now? Yes. Oh dear, that's not good. Right. Well, what's the purpose of this paper? COVID has had a huge impact on Boston, and as we move into the recovery phase, the public may well be saying to us, what is it that you people are going to do to make sure that as we come out of COVID-19, we are doing all that is possible to assist local people and local businesses prosper from what has been a pretty miserable year. What this report does is two things. First of all, it summarises, for the sake of the public, frankly, but also for members, those things that we are doing at present, which are likely to contribute towards the recovery from COVID. And if you think about it, we're doing an enormous amount of things. The paper that Michelle and Lydia have just presented on tourism and leisure is one example of the great steps we're taking to boost the economy. There are lots of other things we could talk about, not least of which will be Michelle's efforts on the Towns Fund for Boston. So there's a great deal of work that we're already doing, which as it develops will undoubtedly help local businesses and local people recover from the ravages they've had to put up with over the last 12 months. But in addition to that, we believe there are opportunities that ought to be taken and almost certainly will be taken, subject to funding, which I'll come to in a minute, that if they're carefully targeted and proceeded with some expedition, are likely to make a real contribution to recovery over the next 18 to 24 months. So the question arises, of course, well, first of all, how are you going to select those topics, or rather projects? Secondly, how are you going to make sure that they are funded, so that if expedition is important, you know you can get on with them well. What we've done in the report is we have analysed those issues which seem to have caused the greatest difficulties for local people and businesses. And you will know them as well as I do, and it's late in the evening, so I'll take it quite quickly. But if one thinks about Boston's economy, a lot of seasonal employment, a lot of low-skilled work, a lot of low-paid work, a lot of insecure incomes. So that when one asks the question, how have people been affected? Well, a lot of people are suffering from financial hardship. A lot of people have lost their jobs because the town has been shut. The environment is looking pretty scruffy. And if we're going to want to get people back into places like Boston and for the shops and other businesses to prosper, there are some obvious things that we should do. So thinking about that, we have clustered our efforts around a number of headings. If I just quickly run through them, we want to boost employment opportunities, especially for young people. We want to tackle health inequalities. We want to improve financial well-being. We want environmental improvements to take place, and we want assistance to business. Now, those are the main headings. Now, in order to do that, what we have asked assistant directors to do is identify a number of projects, scope them out, specify what they're to achieve, specify what success looks like, identify the budget, so that monies that have been made available by government and monies which will be made available by government can be used quickly without a lot of fiddling around and get on with things. Now, you might say, oh, that's interesting. I see that if I read the report carefully, they're in an appendix. Well, they were, and they are. But we recently had a Reserve Members' Day, and what that Reserve Members' Day very helpfully did was highlight that in certain respects, the projects, so-called, that had been specified, lacked a certain clarity, precision. One might say, perhaps a little harshly, that because they were a little vague, the notion that they created some sort of drop-down menu that could be implemented quickly was a notion that perhaps needed a little development, and I would agree with that. Now, we considered the options. One was to delay this report, so we miss a cycle. The other is to ask members to agree the principles it espouses, but to ask a particular portfolio holder to assume responsibility with me for ensuring that within the next 4 weeks, all of the reports, I beg your pardon, all of the projects that are set out in the draft reports appendices are worked up to an acceptable standard. And I think, if I may invite you to adopt that approach, there is no danger in doing so, because this report is intended to, as I say, assure the public we understand how our existing work will assist recovery from COVID, and to assure the public that we have clearly in mind the sorts of things we ought to be doing to better secure the recovery. The exact list of projects that we would like to draw down in future as funds are and become available, it seems to me can wait another 4 weeks without causing any real harm to anything. But I do think it's important to remember takes charge of overseeing that process so that it doesn't, as these things sometimes have a habit of doing, disappear into the sunset.
Thank
So,
you.
That's it.
I'm sorry to have dropped it on you, Tim, but I know how hard you've been working on this. It's just like I invited Lydia to come in and speak. It's very important that people know we've got very good officers working behind. I'm really happy to approve this and move it myself, but I'll bring Nigel in because he's indicating to ask a question.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. I think it's important that we get on with this. My portfolio of economic regeneration and development works hand in hand with this, and it's very, very important that we get this thing off the ground. And as the words that Mr. Leader uses, at pace, and this needs to be not just at pace, but at supersonic pace. If I understood rightly, he was asking for a member volunteer to drive it forward. I'm quite happy to take up that challenge immediately.
Thank you. You should know better than volunteering.
One volunteer is better than 20 pressmen, Leader.
Thank you. Martin Griggs, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. I think there's some fantastic stuff in the report, but I really want to emphasise the environmental plan going forward. I think, as the last agenda item showed, and I know we didn't highlight it, but it is in the report, the vast amount of fly tipping that currently blights the town and how much rubbish is disposed of. I know the previous agenda item shows how fast it's collected, but as we know, and obviously it's demonstrable now, the faster we collect it doesn't necessarily mean the problem goes away. It seems to be that the problem gets worse and people just dump more. So I just want to really highlight the elements of this report that show we're going some way to address it. And I'm really excited, having spoken to Councillor Stevens and knowing some of the things that she's going to be bringing forward very shortly. I think the faster we can get them on, get things on the ground running and tackle some of the really big issues that are facing residents and communities in the town, the better, as well as obviously the economic regen stuff's fantastic as well.
Thank you very much, Martin. Jonathan.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, I want to take Tim back to a talk he gave, Answer Recovery. This is on the 18th of March. And I made notes at the time. Tim, you said, firstly, you were going to identify existing programmes of work. Secondly, you were going to look at additional programmes that ELDC and BBC would like to do. And I think your three main themes were, one, community health and well-being, focusing on the young and the elderly, those in poor health. Secondly, in environmental improvements. And thirdly, direct and indirect help to local businesses. Now, I would have thought to a extent we're already doing that. But I'm then going to go forward to the projects list, because I counted, there is 19 projects, and some of them, as you say, were quite hazy and nebulous in what they were setting out to do. Others were more detailed. But I was looking at some of the financial commitments. Digital marketing of 600,000, that's already covered, we know, from additional support grant monies. We've got 93,000 for market support. Attractive car parks, 100 to 250,000. Environmental improvements, town tidy, that's 35,000. Encourage economic activity, 25,000. Improve financial well-being, 50,000. Procurement alignment, 5,000. Shopfront improvement, I think the funds are already in place for that, 375,000. As also the funds for empowering health communities. And then we had acquiring vacant premises. There were various options there about redeveloping, but one of them was a £2 million option. So my key point is this, real Tim, that money is tight, and surely so much of this is dependent on us being in receipt of further central government monies, enabling to do some of the things that have been highlighted in these projects. Thank you. I don't know if Tim wants to comment on that or not.
Tim?
I agree, but with one caveat, I suppose. There will arise opportunities to, for example, purchase vacant and underused sites, which will have an initial cost. But one would hope and anticipate that a lot of those potential projects would also have attached to them two things. First of all, capital appreciation as a result of investment, and secondly, an income stream as a result of thinking of doing something useful with them. So whilst there may be projects that have an initial cost, they may also be projects which have the potential to wash their faces. And I think whilst the numbers that you've mentioned, you know, £2 million here and there to buy this and that, are on the face of it prohibitive, I'm not sure that actually in reality some of these schemes will prove to be impossible to execute. If they are, well, we won't be doing them. But I think when you've got officers like Michelle and Lydia looking at the opportunities you've got in and around Boston, and given the increasing confidence, I think that we see as a result of having done so well with the Towns Fund, I think we are now in the position of being able to have a go, partly because people are giving us money to have a go, and partly because as a result of the experience we've gained, we know we can do it. So that sounds a little bit airy-fairy, I know. What I'm trying to say is I recognise the problems. Let's look for opportunities. And I think one of the things I've learned over the last 18 months is where you find an opportunity and you talk to government and they look at it and say, do you know what? That looks interesting. That looks innovative. Money often comes. That's where I'd like to look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, may I support what Tim is saying there? I think Tim makes a really valid point around different funding streams that are going to come online over the next few years in a post-COVID recovery situation. And Tim is absolutely right about the confidence that not just investors that we already have in the town, but also those looking into the town. And we've seen that with landowners already in the town who perhaps previously were saying to us, do you want to buy the site? But now we're saying, actually, we're interested in talking to you about a JV. So Tim makes some really valid points there around how this recovery plan will come into being over the next couple of years. And it will be about being able to demonstrate. We have, I think both Tim and I detest the phrase pipeline projects, but invariably it is a phrase that is used often. And this demonstrates that we're considering these and bringing innovation to the way that the councils are working to deliver that recovery. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to take Michelle's point a step further, look, I suppose, I mean, Michelle knows the town very, very well. You know that I don't, because I haven't been associated with Boston very long. But the way things happen is this, that councillors who do know the town well will have ideas. Now, those ideas, if they are identified, can be looked at by officers very quickly. And some of them will fly and some of them won't. But if they will fly, I think that there is a good chance now that because we've just done so well with the Towns Fund and raised our profile so much, you might find actually, as Michelle says, not only do we have the opportunities of plugging into local government funds, and they'll say, look, Boston, East Lindsey, these people are doing things, let's put a bit of money their way. But local businesses too will perhaps take a more positive view. So could I invite you members to have a look around you, identify those environmental schemes that you think might work. If they won't, they won't. But if they will, terrific. Let's have a go. Let's don't take it from officers that we've got all the ideas. We've done our best. But actually there'll be things that don't occur to us that occur to you. So tell Michelle, tell Lydia, they will talk to Martin Kay, and you'd be amazed how much can be achieved by just, you know, lighting the blue touch paper. But help us help you. We have not got all the answers.
Thank you very much, Tim. The other point I was going to bring up before I bring the other two hands in is very much the Towns deal has been very good. It's brought businesses in to working for Boston. It's brought education in for working for Boston. And I think the answer is together we can. And it's brought all elements together, and success breeds success, as you quite rightly said. And I believe in the team we've got, and I'm sure we'll go on to do a lot more. Councillor Nigel Welton, please.
Thanks. There's one word that pops up quite a lot in the world that I work in with Michelle, and that's ambition. There is ambition. Now, we could walk through the park kicking stones with our hands in our pockets, whistling sweetly into the sky, hoping that all this goes away. Or we could get our hands out of our pockets and start lifting up stones and having a look what's under them. And I'm not one for whistling. And I think that there is some amazing opportunities in this country for us to dip into pockets of money here, there, and everywhere, a little bit here and a little bit there. And I would rather that we come up with 100 projects and 90 of them don't work or don't go forward, because it means you have 10 that do. If you only bring 5 and 1 goes forward, then you're down, aren't you? So we come up with ideas because that's our jobs. We're community leaders. We see things. We know our areas. We know our communities. We know our districts. We know what's out there. We know what it needs. We feed that in. It's our officers that have the skill set, the professionalism, the years of experience. I mean, I don't know how Michelle does it, but she can pluck £500,000 out of the air just by looking at the clouds. She's just, if there's money there, they find it. We seem to have got a set of officers around us at the moment that just amaze me sometimes with where they get the ideas and the money from. You suggest something one day, a couple of days later, there's a meeting with somebody else and a potential funding or potential application here, there, and everywhere. So there are some councils around this country that will just sit back and think COVID's nearly over. We're all getting our jabs. It's all going to be fine. We can all go back to work. We can all do everything. But the reality is that things aren't going to go back to normal unless we pull our fingers out, put some documents together, something we can debate, something we can discuss, plans, aspirations, ambition, and go forward. We've got an amazing set of people that can do that, and we have to use them to the full. Get this going, get it off, and get started. But 500 ideas is better than none. It's all about numbers. The more you apply for, the more you're going to get. We've all got them, and don't sit there in your wards, in your areas saying, oh, well, look at this is rubbish. Yeah, it's rubbish. Do something about it. Speak to your officers, come up with a plan, come up with a solution. Don't give me a problem. Give me a solution how you want to fix it. Talk to people, find it. And that's what our officers do. They are so proactive in coming to us. And that's why we have these reports tonight. Visitor economy report, the COVID recovery report. It's because they're forward-thinking officers, a forward-thinking team, all linked together under the alliance, working hard. And that's what we like. So I shall be talking to Michelle and Tim over the next few weeks, and I'll be bringing some ideas forward because I've already got a list.
Indeed, that is why our town deal was so successful, because the public and other people all pitched in with ideas. They were gone through by the town deal board, and we picked some winners. And in the words of Eisenhower, there's always opportunity. And that moves us on to Adrian, who's been very patient.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want assurance to Councillor Noble. It's a long list or a starting point, call it what you will. And if funding is available for these projects, then great. But I want to provide you with assurance that none of these projects will take place if they require Boston funding without coming towards you first for approval. So we won't be doing 2 million schemes, such as you mentioned, without it being a full report that comes to council in the first instance.
Thank you very much for those assurances, Adrian. So I'm more than happy to move the recommendation that the recovery plan set out in Appendix A and authorise its implementation. I'm very happy.
Second that.
Thank you, Nigel. So it's been moved, it's been seconded. We'll move to the vote, Jeanette. Thank you.
Chairman, again, if members could indicate if they are for, against, or wish to abstain. Councillor Abbott.
For.
Councillor Austin.
For.
Councillor Griggs.
For.
Councillor Noble.
For.
Yourself, Chairman.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Walton.
For.
That's carried unanimously, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. And it's been an absolute pleasure to see so many positive things on our agenda going forward, and the fact that we're thinking forward, absolutely fantastic. So thank you. This concludes the evening's business. So I will now close the meeting. Thank you very much. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.